How you doing? This is Garrett Rowe. I'm with Heads Up Decoy, and I'm with my good buddy Travis Glassman. We're here to talk about some Heads Up Decoy hacks. It's about that time of the year. It's early October. It's going to get ramped up. Every day is going to be a little bit better until Thanksgiving.
That's right.
As far as deer season goes. Yep. And so we thought we would put together a little video about some of the things that you and I have done and some of the things we've learned from some of our friends and customers that help utilize the decoys maybe a little bit differently than maybe what's necessarily on my website. But before we do that, we first got to talk about, like, why did I design the decoys the way that I did. And in the original design, and the core of this, as you know, is a handheld decoy. And everybody's like, why would you hold your decoy in your hand? And because that's not what bow hunting is. You know, bow hunting is, you know, it's stealthy. It's, you don't want to be you don't want to be seen. Well, we oftentimes hunt in really nasty weather, and we also like to be in control of our hunt. And when you set the decoy up and it's stationary, you are then relying and hoping that whatever it is you're trying to decoy is going to see that decoy, whether it's an elk or a mule deer or a whitetail. And as you know, we like to have control of our hunt, and we want to make sure that they see it, and we want to control what's going on.
Right.
And having some idea of animal behavior, Travis, you know this as well as I do, helps use these decoys a lot better.
Absolutely. And to Garrett's point, real quick, just to add in, you know, the main key that I just took from what he said is by having a stationary decoy, you're relying on them to see it first. And how many times have we been in a situation where we're trying to grunt or do anything we can to get their attention, and then sometimes they still don't see the decoy. It may be in a swell, it may be in a hard to see spot. So anyway, having the capability of grabbing that decoy and moving into a position where you know they're going to see it just ups your odds tremendously.
Yeah, and it allows us to hunt very aggressively.
Yes.
And by changing that mentality of being passive and stealthy and all these things that kind of have generally gone on and they're still work for bow hunting, we've just decided that we want to sometimes have to take the hunt to them if we want to have success. And right. So that's basically why I designed the Heads Up Decoy being handheld. And over the years we've evolved to have it so a lot of people can hunt with it, and it suits the user, how they feel confident in using it. So if you don't have to hold it in your hand, we make a clamp. It's a heavy duty clamp, which you're going to see, and we also make them bow mountable. And so we make a bow mount, and every decoy fits into the clamp and fits into the bow mount. And so then you have, you know, basically the entire setup at your disposal. And so you have an arsenal that you can take with these decoys and use it however the hunt says you need to use it.
Right. Yep. So just make sure, like you said, to don't cut yourself short. If you do start using the decoys, make sure that you have multiple ways of mounting it. If you want to, you know, run and gun and you know you're going to get a very up close and personal shot, maybe the bow mount is the perfect situation. Maybe you want to go into a different way of mounting it on a stake or something. We'll get into that on how we would recommend doing it. But yeah, just make sure that you ask questions or kind of research on all the different ways you can mount it.
Yeah, and so, you know, the reason why we're doing this video in the first place, the hacks, is because we get a lot of questions about, what if we do this? Can I do this? You know, how do you do that? And so we're going to go and address a couple of those hacks, how we do it. And then we're going to also address some frequently asked questions probably in another video. Sure. So if anybody knows Travis, knows that Travis has had a lot of success with our decoys, tons. And he has some of these hacks down to a science. And he and I had talked a couple weeks ago thinking, man, we really need to get together and shoot a quick video about some of the things he does, some of the things I do. And Travis, he films and shoots big deer, and he has a system, and he's going to go and he's going to review this with you and hopefully answer some of the questions that maybe he gets about how he uses it and how it works best for him.
Okay. All right, so I've done several trials and errors and come to what I think is what works best for me. So basically, you're looking at a simple hot wire fence, cheap plastic stake from a farm and home store. I cut this down. Normally they're probably 4 feet tall. I cut this down to approximately 2.5, 3 foot, depending on the height of the terrain that you're wanting to hunt in. And then what I did is I got an extra bow mount from Heads Up Decoy, and I was able to use the mounting hole that you would normally run the bolt through to your stabilizer mount. And I drilled a hole in this post, and I was able to tighten this down with a lock nut, and it won't really move a whole lot. I mean, I can force it to move depending on if I want to change the pitch of the decoy a little bit. But primarily, a lot of the new style decoys that are coming out are mostly vertical. So a lot of times it's going to be pretty darn close to vertical. So, but the great thing about these mounts is there's a roll pin in the bottom that engages with the little U shape of the carbon rod that goes into the decoy. You slide that in, it's not going to turn on you. You get that fully engaged and it's set. The reason I chose this stake particularly is because I like that the bottom of it has a steel shank to it. You're able to pierce firm ground, a little bit of rock, maybe some, maybe it's super dry, which is mostly the case out in my area, but yeah. You can really, when you're on a knee, you can get down and put your elbow into it and really get it dug into the ground. And you're kind of below the decoy, as you can see. I always like to make it to where the normal body line of the decoy is going to be above where my head is at. So a lot of times I'm looking over some grass that's about this high, and a lot of times if a deer's standing in a CRP field or a tall stubble field, all you're going to see is about the top half of their body anyway. So this is a perfect scenario. And again, this is my favorite because I'll basically just carry it alongside. I'll have my bow in this hand, and maybe I'll have a buddy filming behind me, and I'll just be covering country, glassing, setting up on a hill, waiting for the right buck to present himself, and then I'll pick the right spot to get in after him, and then present the decoy when the time comes. And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later.
Yep. And so Travis's his hack for the ground stake, and I need to tell you that the things that we have bought, like somebody's gonna just look at, well, I could make this, and so we've got the clamp and we've got the bow mount. You can go to the hardware store, and in $4 and a little bit of time and some paint, you have something way cheaper than I'm gonna be able to sell.
Right.
And it's gonna work perfect.
And
so,
we've talked about it over and over about producing, a store-bought stake specifically with the Heads Up Decoy logo on it. But again, to his point, it's kind of like tailor make it to what you like. Everyone likes something a little bit different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's super simple. If you have any fabrication abilities at all, you can figure this out. No big deal. So,
and one of the things about Travis's stake is that it is steel on the bottom here. It's plastic, but it's quiet, so it's not going to bang around and rattle. So even if he has it in his pack and he's going to hike in somewhere, it's not going to be clanking around against his bow or against maybe a tripod or anything like that. It's pretty quiet.
Right.
And it's lightweight and durable and flexible.
Yep. So a lot of times, to Garrett's point, I'll take this and I'll stuff it down in a vertical pocket of my backpack, and then I'll take this and I'll strap it to the back of the backpack with the straps going across. And if I'm going to cover a half mile in a hurry just to get to a glassing point, I'll have this thing all packed in, and you won't even have to carry it. So that's the beauty of this thing. The logo, be mobile, stay mobile. I mean, you're hauling across the country.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is you have a very realistic decoy at your hands if you ever need to break it out. So yeah, that's the point.
So, one of the things too, I think we reviewed and talked about with your hack, sometimes if if the deer that you want to shoot is angling in at you, you have the ability to turn that. Correct?
Yep. So what I like to do is with this in the ground, to Garrett's point, I come in here and I stake it, okay? So in this case right here, this doe is here, and a lot of times a buck will like to move around the decoy. Maybe he's going to come out just at a 45-degree angle. Maybe he's not wanting to get all the way downwind. It doesn't really matter. Whatever the deer are going to do, you're going to read it. And I'm literally sitting here with my bow underneath the decoy, and if they start to turn, you're just turning with them, and then all you got to do is just make a quick shift. And don't be afraid to make a move, because the deer or the decoy, the deer thinks it's a live animal, so they're expecting movement around the decoy. Don't be afraid, and don't think that you're going to get busted by shifting just a little bit. So they're expecting movement. I've seen people intentionally move ears, actually stand up and present it and almost flash it to where if they're not looking at you, they will finally look at you. So they're expecting the movement.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
We've been obnoxious before when we hold that decoy up, because the point is that get their attention.
Yep.
And the profile is really good, so they know what it is. And then if they're interested and then they come in, you can dial the presentation back to something more realistic.
Correct. That's what I like about this is, you can always, jump up and do whatever you got to do. You can take it out of the holder and, run with it, whatever. And then if you have to dial it back in, like he said, just get everything tucked in the height that you want and shove this thing in the ground and you're ready to go.
Perfect. And what did that run you? Maybe less than $5?
Yeah, I mean, you can use the bow mount that I already had for my bow.
Yeah.
Or you can buy another one and just have it specifically set up for this, which is what I chose to do. But the stake itself was like $2.50 or something, and then a bolt and some paint. You're talking $5, $6, $7. So
yeah,
not a big deal.
And with his also, like just with mine, which I'm going to show you, you can make, if you get a couple of them, you can make them various lengths,
yep.
Depending on where you're hunting. Like, a lot of times the CRP that we get trapped in, I guess, or where these deer are, sometimes it's this tall.
True.
And so I want my decoy to stick up above it so they can see the antlers or the ears or whatever. So I may have a couple of them at different lengths. It just kind of depends at my disposal.
Sure.
It just kind of depends on where I'm hunting.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because mine is dialed in for the area that I hunt, which is a little more barren ground and not as much cover, so I can completely understand. I mean, you may want to get one of these stakes and not trim it at all. So
yeah,
I chose to just chop mine down a little bit just to get it a little tighter. So.
All right, well, I'm going to show you my hack. My hack is next, and it's maybe just as scientific, maybe not, but I have two different hacks. All right, so my hacks, I have basically, I got some PVC pipe and a tent stake, the bow mount, and then I've also made one where I ran a smaller diameter PVC through here and then just screwed it in so it doesn't turn and rotate. Again, I have the tent stake. The tent stake is in there with different, not only is the bolt, but it's angled, and it's got this. This is all designed to keep my stake from doing this if I don't have my hands on it when it's really windy.
Yep.
And the clamp that we have, it's a heavy duty clamp. It's designed to hold the decoy. It's designed to grab and grip and hold up in a fair amount of wind. I've hunted in some pretty serious winds out here because we are in wind country, and the clamp will hold there. Sometimes it'll break off what I clamp it on. So
yeah.
I've had it on tree limbs and dried branches on the ground, and it'll break them off sometimes before it comes loose. So.
Yep.
Anyway, so I'm going to show you the first one I have, which is a T. And again, it's kind of the same thing. Slide the handle of the decoy into the clamp. There's a notch in there, and it fits around a roll pin so it doesn't spin. And I jam this into the ground. And again, can you hold that for me?
Sure.
We talk about the various lengths, mm-hmm. and I jam it in the ground. It's not going to spin, and I made it into a T. So if generally the wind is hitting the decoy like this, face on. So I made it into a T. So when I clamp it to this T, if the wind blows, it'll push that clamp. When the wind blows, it'll push the clamp up against this post back behind it and give it an additional support. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I did my hack on that. It's not going to spin. And a lot of times this is what I use when I'm either calling, rattling, sequence, or if I'm maybe want to tuck back into this cedar right here and hope a buck is cruising up and down this creek here. Mm-hmm. So that's how I run my little hack, and then I also have one with the bow mount. So you got anything to add on that one?
Just one thing that I want to reiterate is one thing that's in common with both of our stakes is that, again, they will not be able to turn. So even though this one has a smooth steel shank to it, it's got this offset 90-degree foot peg that digs into the ground to where it will eliminate it from rotating. Garrett had a great idea with using an L or a kind of a V-shaped stake. Once you get that in the ground, it's not turning. So I really also like the offsetness of the T that he's talking about, just because, like he said, you can, have that heavy-duty clamp up against, and it's going to make it more rigid.
Yep. Yeah, and it'll hold right there, and some, this will bend and flex a little bit, but it's not going to fall over. Yep. And then again, I threw a bow mount on and bolted it in, and I went a little bit overboard, probably on my. On this hack, I went ahead and got a knob, and that way I can turn it and loosen it. But again, I used the bow mount again, and then just for this one, and then I can just plug it in, and it's up.
Yep. You can dial in the pitch of your decoy. If you happen to be on uneven terrain, you can adjust the pitch and then tighten your hand knob down. So that's a great idea.
Yeah. So that's all I did with that one, and then it holds right there, and you can see it's a little taller. And I'm kneeling, and just like Travis said earlier, I'm below the decoy, and I can draw my bow, I can squat, and I can move around a little bit. Mm-hmm. And again, let's emphasize this: they're expecting movement. They're not going to wig out.
No.
When they see a little movement.
What I found is even like usually we'll have two people, meaning my wife and I or my buddy and I filming or whatnot. And anything that we do movement-wise that's underneath the so-called top silhouette of what the deer would be, we have never one time had any deer spook or even get nervous. Yeah. So if you're down here and you're moving around, I mean, again, a lot of times you have a little brush in front of you, they're expecting movement. So don't be afraid to position for a shot. Don't be afraid to draw your bow and lean out or whatever. I mean, we've had
when you
luck.
start going out over here on an approaching deer, that's pretty much... That's not what
stay below the back line.
Stay below that,
and
you can kind of juke and jive back here.
Yep.
And that's what I do sometimes. So I have my bow here, and I have a stabilizer with a 5/16 inch bolt hole, and that comes with the bow mount. And I like to have it on the end of my stabilizer, but you don't have to. You can put it at the riser. If there's some type of a stacker system or whatever, you can put the bow mount between that. You can have the decoy come off to the right side of your bow or the left side of your bow. It really doesn't matter. It's personal preference. 99.9% of the people that do it generally have it coming off of this side. If I'm solo and I have a hat cam on, which is usually how it is, I go ahead and just put it on this side of the bow, so when I'm drawing you can see the footage, and that's basically it. So there's no real right or wrong answer whether you like it on this side or that side. I think most people generally like it on this side because it does cover them up a little bit, and that's, it's a personal preference. Maybe balances the bow, but I've redesigned the decoys so the handle's a little more vertical, so it sits nicer in your bow. It sits nicer on the clamp. So and if we're holding it, we're not holding it like the old style was right here, and it would wear a guy out. It's a little easier to hold it with
Yep, everything in line vertically.
Yeah. So that's kind of the bow mount, and make sure you practice with the bow mount. Make sure you're comfortable. Most of my shots, are within 20 yards with the decoy. I would say that if you're going to use the decoy with the bow mount, you're going to probably want to have a little bit more control of your bow. So you're going to have a little bit more of an aggressive grip on your bow than you normally do if you're just shooting with just the bow itself.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the main thing, like you said, practice, and then whatever side you feel comfortable with, like Garrett said, a lot of people come over here on this left side, and I like it because you're kind of in line, and you're always going to be behind that decoy, and you can just draw behind it, and then you're good to go. But Garrett likes it on that right side just because he filmed some stuff, and that's totally understandable. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just the main thing is presenting the decoy and being mobile.
Yeah. So this is a wrap up for our quick hack video that we made, kind of telling you the different ground stakes that we use. We use the bow mount, we use the clamp to help support our decoys hands-free, either stationary or you're mobile a lot with yours. And I'll use mine stationary generally. Usually I'll run the bow mount. But this is kind of a quick little video of how we designed a couple of things to kind of help enhance the decoys beyond what I sell. They're cheap, inexpensive, and customizable because you're making it.
There you go.
So be mobile, stay mobile.